Jake Morrison stood near the entrance of the grand reception hall, his eyes scanning the crowd with practiced efficiency. The room was filled with beings he had only seen in briefing videos until 2 weeks ago. The Velkar were tall and elegant, their skin shimmering with a faint crystalline quality that caught the light in strange ways. They moved with grace that seemed almost choreographed, and their eyes glowed softly in shades of blue and violet. He had been a Marine for 8 years before taking this job as a security officer for the diplomatic corps. The pay was better, and he thought it would be safer than combat zones. Now, standing on an alien flagship millions of miles from Earth, he was not so sure about the safer part. Ambassador Lisa Bennett stood near the center of the room, speaking with several Velkar officials. She wore her best formal attire and a diplomatic smile that Jake recognized as her nervous one. This was humanity's first real attempt at making friends with the Velkar Empire, and everyone knew how important it was. The Velkar controlled key trade routes that Earth needed for expansion into this sector of space. Jake's earpiece crackled softly. "Morrison, you're making our hosts nervous. Try to look less like you're expecting an attack," came the voice of his supervisor, Commander Greg Hayes. "Just doing my job, sir," Jake replied quietly, but he did try to relax his stance a bit. The problem was that his instincts were screaming at him. Something felt wrong. He had learned to trust that feeling in combat. The time it saved your life, you never questioned it again. Right now, that same feeling was making the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The Velkar guards were positioned throughout the hall, carrying ceremonial energy weapons that Jake had been assured were not actually functional in this setting. But 3 of them had shifted positions in the last 10 minutes, moving closer to a particular area of the room. Their movements seemed coordinated in a way that did not match the random patrol patterns they should be following. Jake touched his earpiece. "Commander, I think we might have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Hayes sounded annoyed. "The guard positions. 3 of them have moved into an attack formation near the eastern platform." There was a pause. "Morrison, you're being paranoid." "These are our hosts. Stand down." Jake wanted to argue, but he knew it would do no good. Hayes was a political appointee who had never seen real combat. The man thought security was about looking professional and not offending people. A figure entered the reception hall, and the entire room seemed to shift its attention. She was young for a Velkar, probably equivalent to her early 20s in human years. Her crystalline skin had a paler, almost silver quality, and her eyes glowed with a soft golden light instead of the usual blue. She wore flowing robes that seemed to move on their own, decorated with symbols Jake did not recognize. "That's Princess Zelira," whispered one of the junior diplomats near Jake. "The Queen's youngest daughter. I heard she's next in line for some regional throne. Big deal in their succession system." The princess moved through the crowd with confident grace, acknowledging greetings with small nods. She was heading toward the eastern platform, the same area where Jake had noticed the guard movements. His instincts went from warning to alarm. Jake started moving before he consciously made the decision, cutting through the crowd toward the princess. He saw Ambassador Bennett's surprised face as he passed, heard Commander Hayes shouting something in his earpiece, but he ignored both. The 3 guards Jake had been watching suddenly moved as one. They raised their supposedly ceremonial weapons, which began to glow with deadly energy. Other Velkar in the crowd screamed and scattered. The weapons were very much functional. "Get down!" Jake shouted, though he knew the princess probably could not understand English. 2 of the guards fired at the platform where Princess Zelira stood frozen in shock. Jake covered the last few feet in a diving leap that would have made his old drill sergeant proud. He hit the princess at waist level, carrying both of them off the platform just as energy bolts scorched the air where she had been standing. They hit the ground hard, and Jake rolled to put himself between Zelira and the shooters. More shots came, and Jake felt searing pain across his left shoulder as one grazed him. The smell of burned flesh and fabric filled his nose, but he kept moving, half carrying and half dragging the princess toward cover behind a decorative pillar. "Stay down," he shouted at her, pushing her behind the pillar. He pulled his own weapon, a human plasma pistol that felt tiny compared to the Velkar energy rifles, but it was all he had. The reception hall had turned into chaos. People were screaming and running in all directions. The 3 attackers were advancing, firing at anything that moved. Jake saw 2 Velkar guests go down, their crystalline bodies cracking from the energy impacts. Where were the other guards? Where was the security response? Jake leaned out from cover and fired 3 quick shots. One caught an attacker in the chest and the Velcar went down hard. The other 2 turned their attention to him, which was exactly what he wanted. As long as they were shooting at him, they were not shooting at the princess. Energy bolts slammed into the pillar, sending chips of alien stone flying. Jake felt several small pieces cut into his face, but he kept returning fire. His training took over and everything else faded away. There was only the target, the trigger, and the next shot. One of his shots hit the second attacker in the leg, dropping them. The third attacker charged forward, apparently deciding that getting close was better than the cover-based firefight. Jake stood up from behind the pillar, took careful aim despite the pain in his shoulder, and put 2 shots center mass. The attacker fell, but not before getting one last shot off. Jake felt it hit him square in the chest and the world exploded into pain. His armor absorbed some of the impact, but the energy burned through. He staggered backward, his vision going dark at the edges. Through the haze, he saw more Velcar guards finally rushing into the hall. About time, he thought distantly. He tried to stay on his feet, positioning himself between the princess and any possible threats. But his legs were not cooperating anymore. Jake felt himself falling. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Princess Zelira's golden eyes staring at him in shock, and something else he could not quite identify. Behind her, a tall figure entered the hall, surrounded by guards in elaborate armor. Even through his fading consciousness, Jake recognized authority when he saw it. That had to be the Queen. His last thought before everything went black was a simple one. He had done his job. The princess was alive. That was enough. The darkness swallowed him whole, and Jake Morrison knew nothing more. Jake woke up slowly, his mind foggy and his body feeling strange. Not painful exactly, but different. Wrong somehow. He tried to move and found that he could, which was surprising given that he remembered being shot in the chest with an energy weapon. That should have killed him or at least left him in a medical coma. He opened his eyes and found himself staring at a ceiling that looked like it was made of living crystal. Soft light pulsed through it in patterns that were almost hypnotic. Definitely not a human medical facility. You are awake. This is good. The voice was soft and melodic, with a slight accent that made each word sound carefully chosen. Jake turned his head and saw Princess Zelira sitting in a chair beside his bed. She wore simpler robes than at the reception, but she still looked regal. Her golden eyes watched him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Your Highness," Jake said, his voice coming out rough. He tried to sit up, remembered his training about showing respect to foreign dignitaries, and winced as his body protested the movement. "Please do not strain yourself," Zelira said, raising a hand. "You have been unconscious for 3 days. Your injuries were severe. Without our medical technology, you would have died within minutes. 3 days. Jake processed that information slowly. "The other attackers? Are you safe now?" Something flickered across the princess's face. "Surprise, maybe. I am safe. The traitors were captured or killed. You stopped them." She paused, then added quietly, "You saved my life." "Just doing my job, ma'am." Now she definitely looked surprised. "Your job? You are a diplomatic security officer. Your duty was to protect your own ambassador, not me. Yet you threw yourself between me and death without hesitation." Why? Jake thought about that. Why had he done it? "You were in danger. I could help. It's what any decent person would do." Zelira stood up and walked to the window, which showed a view of space that made Jake's head spin a little. Stars and nebulae painted the darkness in colors he had never seen from Earth. "Among my people, we have a concept called the Corvash. It means life debt. When someone saves a member of the royal bloodline at the risk of their own life, a sacred bond is formed. This bond cannot be ignored or dismissed." "I don't understand," Jake admitted. The princess turned back to face him. "You are bound to me now, Jake Morrison. The Corvash must be repaid through service or through a bond of equal magnitude. You cannot simply return to your people and forget this happened. Our laws are clear." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "I'm not looking for a reward. I don't want anything from you." "That makes what you did even more remarkable," Zelira said softly. She moved closer to the bed, studying his face like he was some kind of puzzle she was trying to solve. "My tutors taught me about many species, but humans remain largely unknown to us. We thought you were a simple people, driven by basic desires for profit and territory. Yet you risked everything for someone you did not know, expecting nothing in return. That's just being human," Jake said, feeling defensive. We look out for each other. It's not special. It is special to us, Zalira replied. In Velkar society, everything has a price, everything has a purpose. We act according to our station and our duty. Self-sacrifice for a stranger is not something we understand easily. Over the next few days, Princess Zalira visited Jake every day during his recovery. At first, he thought she was just being polite, fulfilling some royal obligation. But as they talked, he realized she was genuinely curious about him and about humanity in general. She asked him about Earth, about his life before joining the diplomatic corps, about human culture and values. Jake found himself telling her about growing up in Colorado, about joining the Marines because he wanted to make a difference, about the friends he had lost in combat and the ones who had made it home. In return, Zalira told him about the Velkar Empire, about how her people had ruled this sector of space for thousands of years, maintaining order through strength and tradition, about how she was expected to marry for political advantage, to strengthen alliances and secure borders, about how she sometimes felt trapped by all the rules and expectations. You speak very freely for a princess, Jake observed one afternoon. Zalira smiled, an expression that transformed her usually serious face. Perhaps you bring out honesty in me, Jake Morrison. You do not treat me like a divine figure or a political tool. You treat me like a person. That is rare. You are a person, Jake said simply. The crown and the title don't change that. She looked at him for a long moment. You see things very clearly. My mother would say too clearly, perhaps. She prefers complexity and layers of meaning. Your mother, the queen. Jake had been trying not to think about that. I suppose she's not happy about all this. On the contrary, Zalira said. She is very interested in you. You should know that she has been watching our conversations. This room has sensors. Jake felt his face heat up with embarrassment. Great. So the most powerful person in the Empire has been listening to me talk about my high school football games. Zalira laughed, a sound like chimes. She finds you fascinating. As do I, if I'm being honest. Before Jake could figure out how to respond to that, the door to his room opened. A Velkar woman entered, and Jake knew immediately who she was even though he had never been formally introduced. Queen Mystara radiated power in a way that made everyone else seem smaller by comparison. She was taller than Zalira, her crystalline skin darker and more dramatic. Her eyes glowed with a deep violet light that seemed to look right through him. Zalira stood immediately and bowed. Jake tried to stand too, but the queen made a gesture that stopped him. Remain resting, human, Mystara said. Her voice was deeper than her daughter's, with an edge of command that made it clear she was used to being obeyed. You are still healing, though our physicians tell me you recover with remarkable speed. Apparently, human bodies adapt well to our treatments. Thank you for saving my life, Your Majesty, Jake said, choosing his words carefully. You saved my daughter's life. It seemed only fair. The queen moved closer, studying him the same way Zalira had, but with an intensity that made Jake want to look away. He forced himself to meet her gaze. I have been reviewing the security recordings of the attack, Mystara continued. You identified the threat before any of my own guards. You moved to intercept without hesitation. You took 3 energy weapon strikes, any one of which should have been fatal, and yet you remained standing until the final moment, ensuring my daughter's safety. I did what anyone would do, ma'am. No, the queen said flatly. You did what a warrior does, what a guardian does. My own security failed that day. Velkar guards trained from birth for their duties, and they failed. You succeeded. Jake did not know what to say to that. The queen seemed to be waiting for something, so he finally asked, what happens now? Queen Mystara and Princess Zalira exchanged a look that Jake could not interpret. Then the queen smiled, an expression that was both warm and somehow dangerous. Now, Jake Morrison, you must make a choice. But first you should know that your human delegation has departed. Your ambassador attempted to negotiate for your immediate return, but I informed her that matters were more complicated than she understood. I suspect your government is quite worried about you. You're keeping me prisoner? Jake asked carefully. Nothing so crude, the queen replied. But the Corvash is real and it is binding. My daughter owes you a life debt that must be acknowledged, and I have my own reasons for wanting you to remain with us for a time. What reasons? That will become clear soon enough. For now, continue your recovery. Speak with my daughter, learn our ways, and consider what it might mean to be the first human to serve in a Velkar royal house. With that, Queen Mystara turned and left the room, leaving Jake staring after her in confusion and growing concern. He looked at Zelira, who had a strange expression on her face. What did she mean by that? He asked. Zelira sat down again, closer to his bed this time. My mother is a brilliant strategist, Jake. She sees opportunities where others see only complications. You have impressed her, which is not easy to do. I think she has plans for you. What kind of plans? The princess reached out and gently touched his hand, her crystalline fingers cool against his skin. The kind that will change your life forever, and perhaps change how our people see each other. Jake looked down at her hand on his, then back up at her glowing golden eyes and realized that his life had already changed in ways he could not begin to understand. Jake had been cleared for light duty after a week in the medical wing. He was wearing a Velkar uniform that had been specially made for his human proportions, which felt strange. The material was lighter than anything Earth produced, but somehow more durable. He stood in an antechamber outside the throne room, waiting to be summoned before Queen Mystara. Commander Hayes had sent him several urgent messages asking what was happening, but Jake had no good answers. The Velkar court officials who managed his schedule were polite but vague about everything. All they would tell him was that the Queen wished to make a formal acknowledgement of his service. Princess Zelira appeared beside him so quietly that he jumped. She had a way of moving that was almost ghost-like, a product of centuries of Velkar genetic refinement for grace and efficiency. You are nervous, she observed. Meeting a queen tends to have that effect, Jake admitted. Especially when you don't know what she wants. Zelira's expression grew serious. I have tried to speak with my mother about her plans, but she will not tell me everything. She believes in keeping her strategies close. But Jake, you should know that whatever happens today, it will be significant. The entire court has been summoned to witness it. That doesn't make me less nervous, I know. She reached out and squeezed his arm briefly, a gesture of support that surprised him. But remember, you saved my life. My mother respects strength and courage above all else. You have shown both. The massive doors to the throne room opened, and a court official in elaborate robes gestured for Jake to enter. He took a deep breath and walked through, very aware that Zelira was following behind him. The throne room was enormous, with walls that seemed to be made of the same living crystal as the medical wing ceiling. Hundreds of Velkar nobles filled the space, all wearing formal attire that made Jake's simple uniform look plain. They watched him walk toward the throne with expressions ranging from curiosity to disapproval. Queen Mystara sat on a throne that looked carved from a single massive crystal. Light flowed through it in patterns that hurt to look at directly. She wore robes of deep purple that seemed to absorb light, and her violet eyes tracked Jake's approach with predatory focus. Jake stopped at what he hoped was a respectful distance and bowed the way Zelira had taught him. The court went silent. Jake Morrison. The Queen's voice filled the hall without her seeming to raise it. You stand before the throne of the Velkar Empire as a human, a member of a young species that has only recently reached for the stars. Yet in the short time you have been among us, you have demonstrated qualities that many of my own people lack. Jake stayed quiet, sensing that speaking now would be a mistake. You identified a threat that my own guards missed, Mystara continued. You acted without hesitation to protect a member of the royal bloodline. You placed yourself between death and my daughter, taking wounds that should have killed you, and when you woke you asked not for reward but only whether the princess was safe. The Queen stood, and somehow she seemed to grow larger, more imposing. Such service cannot go unacknowledged. Such courage deserves recognition. But more than that, it demands a response that matches the magnitude of the deed. She descended from the throne, walking toward Jake with measured steps. Every eye in the room was locked on her. I invoke the right of claiming, Queen Mystara declared, her voice ringing through the hall. By the ancient laws of our people, by the authority vested in the crown, I claim Jake Morrison into the royal household. He shall serve as royal guardian to Princess Zelira until such time as the Corvash is fulfilled. A wave of shocked murmurs ran through the assembled nobles. Jake felt his stomach drop. This was not a simple thank you. This was something much bigger. Your Majesty, Jake began, but the Queen raised her hand. You entered Velkar space, Jake Morrison. You accepted our hospitality aboard our vessels. In doing so, you temporarily submitted to our laws and customs. The right of claiming is ancient and absolute. Do you dispute my authority in this matter? It was a trap, Jake realized. If he said yes, he insulted the Queen in front of her entire court. If he said no, he accepted whatever this claiming meant. But there was a third option, one that his Marine training had taught him. When trapped, change the battlefield. I don't dispute your authority, Your Majesty, Jake said carefully.
But I am a human and I have rights under human law.
I have a duty to my own people. I cannot simply abandon Earth. More murmurs from the crowd, but these sounded different. Surprised, maybe even impressed that he dared to push back. Queen Mystara's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. You dare to negotiate with me? In my own throne room? I dare to speak the truth, ma'am. You said you respect courage. Well, here it is. I won't be anyone's prisoner, no matter how nice the cell. If you want me to stay and serve the princess, then we do it on terms we both agree to. The silence in the throne room was absolute. Jake was pretty sure he had just committed some kind of social crime that would get him thrown in a dungeon, but he was not going to roll over just because everyone expected him to. Then Queen Mystara laughed. It was a genuine sound of amusement that seemed to shock the court even more than Jake's defiance had. You are either very brave or very foolish, human. Perhaps both. She circled him slowly, like a predator evaluating prey. Very well. State your terms, Jake's mind raced. This was probably his only chance to set boundaries. I need to maintain contact with Earth. Regular communication so my government knows I'm okay. I need the right to refuse orders that go against human ethics or values. And I need a guarantee that when the life debt is paid, I can go home if I choose to. Acceptable, the Queen said immediately, which made Jake wonder if he should have asked for more. In return, you will serve as Princess Zelira's personal guardian. You will protect her with your life, as you have already proven willing to do. You will advise me on matters of security from a human perspective, since clearly your instincts are superior to our own predictive models, and you will conduct yourself with the honor befitting a member of this royal house. She stopped in front of him, and her violet eyes seemed to bore into his soul. Do you accept these terms, Jake Morrison? What choice did he have? The Queen had outmaneuvered him completely, but at least he had gotten some protections for himself. I accept. Then kneel. Jake hesitated for just a moment, then dropped to one knee. Queen Mystara placed her hand on his head, and he felt a strange tingling sensation, like electricity but not painful. By my authority as queen, by the power vested in the crown, by the ancient laws of our people, I claim you. You are no longer merely human. You are now a member of this house, a guardian of the royal bloodline, a bridge between your people and mine. Rise, Jake Morrison, royal guardian. Jake stood, feeling dizzy. The tingling sensation faded but left something behind, a sense of connection he could not quite explain. The court erupted into conversation, nobles speaking urgently to each other in their melodic language. Princess Zelira moved to Jake's side, her expression a mix of concern and something else he could not read. Well done, she whispered. You negotiated terms with my mother and lived. Very few can claim that. What just happened? Jake whispered back. What did she mean by not merely human anymore? The claiming includes a minor genetic bonding, Zelira explained quietly. Nothing that changes who you are, but it creates a connection to the royal house. You can now access certain Velkar technologies keyed to royal blood. You are part of the family now, in a sense. Jake's head was spinning. He had gone from security officer to alien royal family member in less than 10 minutes. His superiors back on Earth were going to have heart attacks. Queen Mystara was speaking again, addressing the court. Let it be known throughout the Empire that the human Jake Morrison stands under royal protection. Any who threaten him threaten the crown itself. He is one of us now. As the formal ceremony concluded and nobles began approaching to offer congratulations or veiled challenges, Jake caught the Queen watching him with an expression he had seen before in tactical officers. She was planning something, several moves ahead of everyone else. Princess Zelira touched his arm gently. Come, you will need new quarters in the royal wing. And I suspect my mother will want to speak with you privately soon. She has not yet revealed her full intentions. As they walked out of the throne room together, Jake realized that saving the princess's life had been the easy part. Living with the consequences was going to be much harder. But he had faced difficult missions before. He would face this one too. At least now he had some idea of what he was dealing with. The Queen had claimed him for reasons beyond just the life debt. He was a piece in a larger game, and he needed to figure out the rules fast. Behind them, Queen Mystara watched the human walk away with her daughter, and her smile was the smile of someone who had just made a move that would change everything. Life in the royal wing was nothing like Jake had imagined. His quarters were larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, with walls that could change color based on his mood and furniture that adjusted itself to his preferences. The technology was impressive, but what struck him most was the isolation. Despite being surrounded by hundreds of palace staff and nobles, he was utterly alone in a way he had never experienced. Princess Zelira became his anchor in this strange new world. She visited him daily, teaching him the Velkar language and explaining the complex web of politics that governed court life. In return, Jake taught her about Earth, about human history, about the wars and struggles that had shaped his people. "Your species has survived so much," Zelira said one evening as they reviewed tactical scenarios in her study. Centuries of conflict, environmental disasters, the near-extinction event of the 22nd century. Yet you endure, you adapt. How? Jake thought about that. We're stubborn, I guess. Humans don't give up easily. When something tries to kill us, we figure out how to kill it back. When the world tries to break us, we rebuild. It's not pretty and it's not elegant, but it works. My mother was right about you, Zelira said softly. You see things differently than we do. The Velkar have ruled for so long that we have forgotten how to struggle. We have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. Before Jake could respond, an alarm chimed. A court official appeared on the room's communication panel, his crystalline features tight with concern. Your Highness, your presence is requested in the arena of proving. A challenge has been issued. Jake saw Zelira's expression harden. Against whom? Against your guardian, Highness. Lord Vex has invoked the right of trial by combat. He claims the human is unworthy of his position. Jake stood up. Who is Lord Vex? A fool, Zelira said flatly. But a dangerous one. He commands significant support among the conservative faction. They see you as an insult, a primitive creature elevated above your station. They want to humiliate you. Then let them try, Jake said. He had faced challenges before. This would be no different. The arena of proving was an open-air structure at the heart of the royal palace. Thousands of Velkar had gathered to watch, filling the tiered seating that surrounded the combat floor. Jake stood in the preparation chamber, checking the weapons he had been provided. A Velkar energy blade and a small shield generator, nothing like the equipment he was used to, but he would make it work. Princess Zelira entered the chamber, followed by Queen Mystara. The queen's presence surprised him. You do not have to do this, Mystara said without preamble. I could order Vex to withdraw his challenge. But that would make you appear weak, dependent on royal protection. Is that what you want? No, ma'am, Jake replied. I'll handle this myself. The queen studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good. But understand that Vex is a skilled warrior. He has trained since childhood in Velkar combat techniques. He will have every advantage except one. What's that? He has never faced an opponent who fights to win rather than to perform. Show him what human desperation looks like, Jake Morrison. Show them all. When Jake walked onto the arena floor, the crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered, caught up in the spectacle. Others remained silent, their disapproval obvious. Lord Vex stood at the opposite end, a tall Velkar with dark crystalline skin and eyes that glowed red instead of the usual blue or violet. He carried a larger energy blade and wore partial armor. The rules were simple. First blood or submission. No killing, though accidents happened. An official raised his hand, counted down, and the match began. Vex moved fast, closing the distance with grace that Jake could never match. The energy blade came in high, aiming for a quick strike that would end the fight immediately. Jake dove to the side, rolling across the arena floor in a move that was pure human inelegance. The crowd gasped at his ungraceful technique. But he was alive, and that was what mattered. Vex turned, a look of contempt on his face. You fight like an animal, human. No grace, no form, just crude survival instinct. Works for me, Jake replied, circling carefully. He activated his shield generator, creating a shimmering barrier in front of him. It would not last long against sustained attacks, but he did not need long. Vex attacked again, this time with a combination that was clearly designed to show off his skill. High slash, low thrust, spinning strike. It was beautiful to watch. And Jake barely managed to block each hit with his shield. The impacts drained the generator's power rapidly. But Jake was not trying to match Vex's technique. He was studying the pattern, looking for openings. Every Velkar movement was precise and controlled, which meant they were predictable. They followed forms and traditions that had been refined over centuries. Jake had been trained to abandon form when necessary, to do whatever worked. On Vex's next attack sequence, Jake did something no Velkar would ever do. He threw his shield generator directly at Vex's face. It was a desperate, crude move that violated every principle of elegant combat. Vex hesitated for just a fraction of a second, surprised by the unexpected action. That was all Jake needed. He lunged forward low under Vex's guard and swept the Velkar's legs. It was a basic wrestling move that any human street fighter would know, but it caught Vex completely off guard. The Velkar warrior went down hard, his energy blade skittering across the arena floor. Jake was on him immediately, his own blade at Vex's throat before the Velkar could recover. "Yield," Jake said quietly. The arena went silent. Vex stared up at him with shock and rage warring on his face. Finally, through clenched teeth, he said, "I yield." Jake stepped back and offered his hand to help Vex up. The gesture seemed to confuse the Velkar, but after a moment he took it. The crowd erupted into noise, some cheering, others arguing loudly about what they had just witnessed. Over the next weeks, there were more challenges. Nobles who thought the first victory was luck. Warriors who wanted to prove human tactics were inferior. Each time Jake won using unconventional methods that frustrated his opponents. He used the environment, threw objects, fought dirty when necessary. He did not care about looking good. He cared about winning. Princess Zalira watched every match and Jake could see her growing admiration. After one particularly difficult fight, she visited him in the medical chamber where he was getting minor wounds treated. "You are changing how my people see humans," she said. "Every victory proves that strength comes in many forms. That adaptation matters more than perfection." "I'm just surviving," Jake said. "Same as I always have." "No." Zalira touched his face gently, her cool fingers soothing against his bruised skin. "You are teaching us, and I am learning." There was something in her eyes that made Jake's heart beat faster, something that went beyond gratitude or friendship. Before he could figure out what to say, Queen Mystara entered the chamber. "Leave us," she commanded, and even Princess Zalira obeyed without question. When they were alone, the Queen moved closer. "You have proven yourself in combat. Now it is time to prove yourself in strategy. I have a task for you, Jake Morrison, a task that requires your particular skills." "What kind of task?" "I need you to investigate my own court. The attack on my daughter was not an isolated incident. There are traitors among my nobles working with external enemies. My traditional security cannot identify them, because they are part of the system. But you are an outsider. You see things we miss." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You want me to spy on your own people? I want you to protect my daughter by finding those who would harm her. Is that not your duty as her guardian?" She had him there. Jake nodded slowly. "What do I have to work with?" "Your instincts, your human perspective, and whatever resources you require. But Jake, be careful. If the conspirators discover you are investigating, they will kill you. Royal protection only extends so far when dealing with court politics." Over the following weeks, Jake worked quietly, observing patterns and relationships among the nobles. He noticed unusual communication between certain houses and unexplained meetings. He tracked financial flows using the palace's monitoring systems, looking for anything suspicious. What he found made his blood run cold. The conspiracy was bigger than anyone thought. It involved not just rogue nobles but also a neighboring empire called the Draxon Collective. They were planning something during an upcoming ceremony called the Celestial Alignment, when the royal family would be most vulnerable. Jake brought his evidence to Queen Mystara late one night. She reviewed his findings in silence, her violet eyes growing darker as she read. "This is worse than I feared," she finally said. "If you are correct, they plan to kill not just Zalira, but the entire royal bloodline. Without us, the empire would collapse into civil war. We need to act," Jake urged. "Set a trap. Expose the traitors before they can move. And if you are wrong, if I accuse my own nobles based on a human's suspicions, the empire would tear itself apart just the same." Jake met her gaze steadily. "Then trust me. The way you trusted me to protect your daughter, my instincts have been right so far." Queen Mystara was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to where Jake sat. She placed her hand on his shoulder and he felt that strange tingling sensation again. "I do trust you, Jake Morrison. More than you know. You have proven yourself in ways I did not expect. And now I must ask even more of you. What do you mean? The celestial alignment is in 3 days. We must act quickly. But there is something you should know first. Something about why I truly claimed you into this house. Before she could continue, Princess Zelira burst into the room, her face pale with fear. Mother, I just received word. The Draxon fleet has been spotted at our border. They are moving into position. Whatever they are planning, it is happening sooner than we thought. Jake stood up, his marine training taking over. Then we need to prepare. Now. The royal palace transformed into a military command center within hours. Jake worked alongside Velkar security forces, identifying potential threats and weak points in the defenses. The celestial alignment ceremony was supposed to be a celebration, but now it would be a battlefield. Queen Mystara had decided to proceed with the ceremony rather than cancel it. If we show fear, the conspirators win, she declared. We will face them head-on and crush this rebellion before it truly begins. Jake pulled Princess Zelira aside in a quiet corridor. You should leave the planet. Get to safety until this is over. Absolutely not, Zelira said firmly. I will not abandon my mother or my people. Besides, you are my guardian. Where I go, you go. Would you leave? She had him there. No, I'd stay and fight. Then we fight together. She reached out and took his hand, a gesture that had become more common between them over the past weeks. Jake, there is something I need to tell you. Something I should have said earlier. Can it wait until after we don't die? Jake asked, trying to lighten the mood. No, it cannot. Zelira's golden eyes were intense. I have come to care for you deeply. More than a princess should care for her guardian. More than is probably wise given the circumstances, but I wanted you to know in case something happens. Jake felt his heart pounding. He had been trying to ignore his own growing feelings, telling himself it was inappropriate, that she was royalty, and he was just a human. But standing there with her hand in his, knowing they might not survive the next day, he could not pretend anymore. I care about you too, he admitted. More than I should. More than makes sense. But Zelira, we're from different worlds, different species. How could that ever work? My mother believes it can, Zelira said softly. She has been planning this from the moment she claimed you. The life debt was real, but it was also an opportunity. She sees you as a bridge between our peoples, Jake, and she sees you as something else. What do you mean? Before Zelira could answer, a guard appeared. The ceremony's about to begin. All royal family members must take their positions. The celestial alignment ceremony took place in the largest chamber of the palace, a vast space with a crystal dome that opened to the sky. Thousands of Velkar nobles filled the room, dressed in their finest. Above, through the dome, Jake could see the alignment happening. Multiple moons and planets creating a perfect line in space that would only occur once in this generation. Queen Mystara stood at the center of the chamber with Princess Zelira and 2 other royal daughters Jake had met only briefly. They wore ceremonial robes and held glowing crystals that symbolized their connection to the Empire. The ceremony required them to remain stationary for hours while priests performed rituals and nobles paid respects. It was the perfect time for an attack. They would be vulnerable, exposed, unable to move without disrupting sacred traditions. Jake stood near the royal family in his guardian uniform, alert for any sign of trouble. Around the chamber, he had positioned loyal security forces at key points, but he knew some of the guards themselves were likely compromised. The ceremony began with chanting and displays of light. An hour passed, then 2. Jake's instincts were screaming that something was wrong, but he could not identify what. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. Then he saw it. One of the priests near the royal family was moving his hands in patterns that did not match the ritual. Jake recognized military signal code, adapted for Velkar fingers. The priest was communicating with someone, coordinating an attack. Jake moved without thinking, crossing the chamber floor and grabbing the priest's arm just as the Velkar reached into his robes for a weapon. The entire room erupted into chaos. Other disguised attackers revealed themselves throughout the chamber, and energy weapons fire began cutting through the air. Protect the queen, Jake shouted, throwing himself in front of Mystara as shots came toward her. His armor absorbed most of the impact, but he felt the heat and pain of the energy burning through. The palace guards engaged the attackers, but the fighting was fierce. More than that, the traitor nobles had timed their attack perfectly with an external assault. Alarms began blaring as Draxon warships appeared in orbit. dropping stealth fields and opening fire on the palace shields. Jake pulled Mystara and Zelira toward cover behind the ceremonial platform. "We need to evacuate," he said urgently. "No," the Queen said firmly. "If we run, the Empire sees weakness. We end this here." She was right, but that did not make it easier. Jake activated his communication device. "This is Morrison. Execute contingency plan now." What the conspirators did not know was that Jake had been preparing for this. He had contacted Admiral Kyle Porter, who commanded a small human fleet that had been waiting in nearby space. They were not as powerful as Velkar or Draxon ships, but they were fast and unpredictable, and right now, that mattered. Human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel above the planet, immediately engaging the Draxon fleet. The surprise was total. No one had expected the humans to be involved in Velkar internal politics. Inside the chamber, Jake coordinated the defense using tactics that confused the attackers. He had the loyal guards abandon formation and fight in small teams, moving unpredictably, using cover that violated traditional Velkar combat doctrine. The attackers, trained in conventional warfare, struggled to adapt. Lord Vex appeared, leading a group of traitor nobles. His red eyes locked on Jake with pure hatred. "You have ruined everything, human. The Velkar Empire should have fallen today, paving the way for a new order. Instead, you have poisoned it with your primitive influence. The only poison here is people like you," Jake replied, raising his weapon. "You want power so badly you would destroy your own people to get it." They fought, but this time there were no rules, no arena protocols. Vex fought to kill, using every advantage he had. Jake fought to survive, using every dirty trick he knew. When it ended, Vex was on the ground, defeated but alive. Jake had learned mercy from the Velkar, even if they had not always shown it themselves. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it finally ended, the conspirators were defeated. The Draxon fleet was retreating, and the royal family was safe. Jake had taken more wounds, but he was still standing, still protecting those he had sworn to guard. In the aftermath, Queen Mystara stood before her people, addressing the assembled nobles who had remained loyal. "Today we faced betrayal from within and attack from without. We survived because we adapted, because we trusted in those who proved their worth through action rather than bloodline." She gestured to Jake, who stood nearby, exhausted and injured but alive. "This human saw what we could not. He protected us when our own failed. He brought allies when we needed them most. And now I will tell you something I have kept hidden until this moment." The Queen moved to stand beside Jake, and Princess Zelira joined them. "I invoked the right of claiming not just to honor a debt, but to forge a new path for our empire. The Velkar have ruled for millennia through strength and tradition. But we have grown rigid, unable to change. The younger species are rising, and we must learn from them or be left behind." Mystara placed one hand on Jake's shoulder and one on Zelira's. "I propose a bond that has never existed before, a joining of human and Velkar at the highest level. Jake Morrison will become consort to the royal house, bonded to both myself and my daughter. This is not just politics. This is recognition that strength comes in many forms, and that our future requires us to embrace change." The chamber erupted into shocked conversation. Jake felt like he had been hit with another energy weapon. Consort, to both the Queen and the Princess. He looked at Zelira, who met his gaze with an expression that was both hopeful and uncertain. "Jake," Queen Mystara said quietly, only for him to hear, "you have proven yourself 100 times over. The life debt is long since paid, but I am asking you now, not as your queen but as Mystara, to stay with us, to be part of something new. My daughter loves you. I have come to respect and care for you in ways I did not expect. In Velkar culture, bonds of power are often shared. Will you accept?" Jake looked at Zelira, at her golden eyes filled with hope. He thought about the past months, about how she had become his closest friend and something more. He thought about Earth, about the life he had left behind, but he also thought about the future, about what this could mean for humanity's place in the galaxy. "I need to know this is real," Jake said. "Not just political strategy, not just securing an alliance. Are you both choosing me, or are you choosing what I represent?" "Ugh." "Both," Mystara said honestly. "I will not lie to you, Jake. You represent an opportunity for change that the Empire desperately needs. But you are also a man of courage, integrity, and surprising wisdom. You challenge me. You make me think differently. That is not something I have experienced in a very long time." Zalira took his hand. I choose you because of who you are. The human who stood between death and me without a second thought. The man who treats me as an equal. The guardian who has become so much more. Jake looked around the chamber at the assembled Velkar nobles, at the human ships visible through the dome above, at the two women offering him something that should be impossible. Then he made his choice. I accept, but on one condition. This cannot be a prison, no matter how nice. I need to remain who I am, a human with all that means. I will serve, I will protect, I will love, but I will not stop being Jake Morrison. That is all we ask, Mystera said, and her smile was genuine. The ceremony that followed was broadcast across both human and Velkar space. The young security officer who had saved a princess became the first human to join an alien royal house, the first to bond with not one but two of the most powerful women in the Empire. Historians would debate for years whether it was politics, love, or something entirely new. Jake stood between Queen Mystara and Princess Zalira as the bonding ritual was performed, feeling the connection form on a level deeper than words. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from Earth to the stars, from soldier to guardian to something unprecedented. Back on Earth, his old Marine friends watched the broadcast in a bar, raising drinks to his image on the screen. Commander Hayes sent a message congratulating him and asking for security pointers. Ambassador Bennett reported that the trade agreement with the Velkar had been finalized with terms far more favorable than originally hoped for. But for Jake, in that moment, surrounded by alien nobility and bound to two beings he had never imagined knowing, the only thing that mattered was simple. He had done his duty. He had protected those who needed protecting. And somewhere along the way he had found a place where he belonged, even if that place was millions of miles from home. Princess Zalira leaned close and whispered, "Thank you for staying. Thank you for choosing us." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you for seeing me as more than just a human. More than just a guardian." Queen Mystera placed her hand over both of theirs. "You stood between death and my daughter, Jake Morrison. Now you stand between our past and our future. Welcome to the royal house. Welcome home." As the ceremony concluded and celebrations began, Jake looked up through the crystal dome at the stars above. Somewhere out there was Earth, his birth world. But here, standing between two remarkable women who had changed his life forever, surrounded by an empire learning to adapt, he realized that home was not always where you started. Sometimes home was where you chose to stand, where you chose to fight, where you chose to love. And he had made his choice.